So, I was playing Football Manager recently and I had a big transfer window where I had to do pretty much a whole squad overhaul with my Aberdeen team, and the whole time I had so many scout reports, so many players that were being suggested as A-star players, excellent talents, and I just didn't know which ones to pick from. I used all the methods that I normally use to narrow it down, and I feel like we nailed the transfer window, and it gave me the idea for this video. I'm going to show you the things that I look for when trying to figure out which player is right, which player is perfect for your team in your FM saves. I'll give you tips, how to compare them to other players that might be transfer targets, and then also, once you've picked that player, a few tips on how to whittle that price down a little bit. We'll be using my Aberdeen save for today's video, and if you do find this video useful, please go ahead and smash that like button for us to share it out to as many people as possible. And even if you think you know everything about signing the right players, there's a few tips in here that I think even the most experienced players might not know about, so hopefully everyone will get some use out of it. Make sure you hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and feel free to get involved in the comments below. And to anyone who wants to check it out, this Aberdeen save is from a series on my channel, which you can find linked in the description. Over there we have some rebuilds and some YouTube shorts about Wonderkids that you might not have heard of, so I really would greatly appreciate any support over there. But with that being said, let's get into it, shall we? And we're going to break it down bit by bit. We're going to start off with the quick and easy ways that you can compare players. Now bear in mind, to get to this point, we've already scouted these players from random nations across the world. If you want to know how to do all of that, there's different tutorials about how to scout players. We've also got tutorials on how to best negotiate the transfers and all of that. But for the sake of right now, we're in a situation where let's say we want a centre-back. And we've got a list of 16 different centre-backs, as you can see, that have all came back with decent scout reports, good enough to get on my shortlist, and realistically there's probably this many that we're actually going to look at, the best of the best for our side. But how do we work out which ones we want to go for? What should we look for? Well, firstly, you've got the easy things. How can you compare two players? This is a basic one, but it's a button that is fairly hidden, so if you didn't know about it, I'll show you now. But what you need to do is click on a player, let's say Barbosa, go to comparison, compare with, and from here you can do two things. One, you can head over into this Aberdeen FC screen, or for you, it will say your team's name, and you can compare him to any player, whether it's first team or development team in your club. Or just before you go on to that, if you hover below your team's name, you can see other players that you've recently looked at. So say we were looking at Barbosa as our first player as we loaded up our game, and the Aberdeen FC thing was here, but there wasn't anyone below. All you need to do is click on someone else, let's say Scott McKellar, and then when you go to the comparison screen, you can see that Barbosa has been added to it. And if we go back, let's say we click on Fernando Coleman now, because we've recently looked at Scott McKellar, he is going to be on our list here to be able to compare to. So this is a way you can get different players to come up. And now let's try and do one of these comparisons quickly. Let's take a look at our two top reported targets, Matteo Turan and Barbosa. One is wanted by AC Milan, the other one is a player playing out in the Uruguayan divisions. Let's compare them, shall we? So we're going to go compare with, and then go down to Matteo Turan. We're going to compare the two and try and figure out who is best for our team. And there's plenty of things we need to consider here, and we'll get on to each individual thing that I really think you should be looking for in both coach reports and also immediately when looking at a player's attributes. Do bear in mind here that we've got a full scout report on both of these players. Now the first thing you'll see when you compare players is this screen, which will tell you a little bit about them. You'll get a rough idea of who's better at what, so you can see in the physicals, it's Barbosa that takes the win. In speed, it's also Barbosa. Vision ends up going down to Turan, and you get the idea there. But there's plenty of other things we need to think about when trying to find who would be the perfect sign-in. The first thing is obviously the age and the value of the player. Yes, it looks like Turan's slightly worse than Barbosa currently, but also Turan is 2 years younger. Maybe in 2 years' time, Turan will be someone that looks better than Barbosa does at the age of 19, and he's also far cheaper than our man Barbosa is. You can see their height and their footedness if that's something you're after. If you're after a left-footed player, a right-footed player, you need to know what you want for your team before you even start comparing these players. If you want a ball-playing defender and one of these is really good at ball-playing and the other one isn't, then you're going to go for the ball-playing defender. But then you might look and say, oh well, Turan here already is a great tackler, but then Barbosa's got a lot going for him in the physical department. Which one's more important? Which one do I need? How do I know who to go for? Well, let's say you're in a world where you can afford both of these players. There's a few things that I would look out for when trying to sign someone. But one of the first things I'm going to analyse, and this is by no means the most important, but just the order that I think you should do it, is firstly, determination. How much does it matter? For a younger player, tends to matter a bit more than someone who's already fully grown, and say a 28-year-old, 29-year-old who isn't going to develop too much more. That that determination might not matter so much, but if you've got a young player who you want to develop, often that high determination is really going to help them. So I'd be looking to see, if Turan had 19 determination, but Barbosa had 3 or 4, that would really sway me in the favour of Turan. But here it's fairly even, both good levels of determination, and that suggests to me they would be decent pickups for my team, in that sense at least. Next, I'm going to go back to the players that I'm looking at. Firstly, we've got Barbosa here, and I'm going to check out their personalities, because your personality in game for a player is made up not only of their determination, but also some things that you can't see without the in-game editor. Professionalism, for example, plays a part in personality, but all you're really going to see without that in-game editor is this here, resolute. Now that is a good personality type to have. It's usually pretty obvious which ones are good or bad, but what we're looking for straight away is to make sure the players that we're looking at don't have any kind of real negative personalities, or if one of them's got a really good personality, that might sway my decision. But Barbosa here, his personality looks okay, it's resolute. Now let's go check out our other centre-back. Now Matteo Turan is only 17, but he has a professional personality, which is very good to have. It means he's got high levels of professionalism, and also his determination is high. That suggests to me he is a player that has a good head on his shoulders. And again, I can rule neither player out really at this stage, because both of them have good personalities, good levels of determination, and there's some of the basics that I'm looking for in my players. It doesn't necessarily fully sway a decision, but I like to see those as underlying attributes and underlying factors before picking a player for my side. Now though, we're going back to our comparison screen from earlier. It's switched around now, so Turan is now the green and Barbosa is the blue, so do bear that in mind. But if we go ahead and go to the report section, this is the next place that I like to look. Now we already know both scouts recommended these players highly from our shortlist. Both of them have got really high potential, and in an ideal world you might sign both of them. Now there's a few things in this scout report that I'm looking out for that I believe are really important when it comes to signing a player. Some things are immediately obvious, right? Like you look at a player who's small and you know that he's not going to be great in the air. You look at a player who's good at finishing and you know he's probably going to have finishing on his coach report. But there's some things that you can't see without an in-game editor that only your coach report can tell you, and they're really, really beneficial to your player and how they're going to suit your team. The first one is one that a lot of people don't look at. It's adaptability. How well is a player going to adapt to playing in a new nation? You can see Matteo Turan here has adaptability as a pro on his coach report. That means he'll adapt to another country fairly easily. Obviously, this is particularly important when you're signing players from abroad, and you'll also see Barbosa has it in his pros as well. Now, don't worry if you don't see it in the pros or cons of a player's report. It likely means that his adaptability is just in the middle. It's fine. It's not great. It's just there. The darker the green these emblems are, the stronger the attribute is. You can see bravery is really high for Matteo Turan, and if you went to his attribute screen, you'll see his bravery is 18, and that's why it's highlighted on his coach report so brightly. The same way in your cons section, the darker the colour, if it's red, that means it's a really low number. If it's orange, you're probably looking at 5 or 6 for each rating. But in this case here so far, we've got two players who are going to adapt well to the country. Now, if they didn't adapt well, it wouldn't be the end of the world. It would just take them longer to get used to their new nation and their new team. And maybe if you're looking for instant results, you might not want that. We also know they've both got good personalities. In the coach reports here, it's showing Barbosa with a glowing pro of being resolute. And also we've got the pro of Matteo Turan here being professional. I'm also looking out for injury proneness pretty early on. If there's something in the cons that says this player is really injury prone, that would worry me quite a lot. Obviously you can manage that, but sometimes you want to avoid it, particularly if it's an expensive transfer. Maybe an injury prone player isn't what you want. But then once you've done all that, one of my favourite attributes in the whole game, a hidden attribute called consistency, is something you'll only be able to see from your coach reports. Again, if you don't see it, it's likely a middle attribute, say 10 out of 20, and won't affect your player too much. It's neither a con nor a pro for the player, but if it's on the higher end, it's going to be a pro, and on the lower end, it's going to be a con. Now, if we look at Matteo Turan, he has consistency in his coach report. That means more often than not, he's going to play to the level that we can see his attributes are set to. If a player is inconsistent, it means most of the time they won't play at the level their attributes suggest they should. Now, if we look at Barbosa, you can see he has a con of consistency, suggesting it's probably less than 10, likely out of 20 it would be 7 or 8 based on the colour of this emblem. Now, does that mean we should never sign Barbosa? No. Consistency is something that you often see lacking, particularly in young players, and it tends to be, even though there's no specific way to improve it out and out, there's no training you can do, no mentoring affects consistency. But what I have found in a lot of my rebuilds and a lot of my Wonderkid to Superstar videos is over time, when a player is just playing a lot and he grows older as time goes on, that consistency will start to iron itself out. But particularly if you want instant results, a lot of us don't play 10 years into a save. You might want to focus more on that consistency attribute, and the fact that Matteo Turan has it and Barbosa doesn't, and Barbosa is the older player and also Turan's 2 years younger, I'm starting to think that Turan might be the right player for us. But there's another factor we really need to take into account before we take this word as gospel when it comes to his coach reports. Now, star ratings are something that should always not be fully believed. They can vary based on a player's form, things such as if they're homegrown or not. It doesn't necessarily mean one player is better than the other in terms of ability, just in terms of what they could be for your club. Now, there's also the factor that anybody can make these coach reports, and you can see who's giving you the report here. This one for Turan has been done by our scout called Creaney, and a scout called Gormal has done the report for Barbosa. Now, if we go and check out both of those scouts by going to our staff section and then to the scouts list, there's a lot to click through, so I won't make you wait. I'll let you know when I find him. Here is Creaney, the man that did the coach report for Turan. You can see his judging player ability is 13 and his judging player potential is 12, so it's okay. But is that the most accurate representation of a player in the world? Probably not, and there's a good chance that he could be wrong in the coach report, or at least maybe not be wrong, but at least not be fully accurate. So whilst we can probably believe everything about his personality, his bravery, we can see that in front of our eyes, but when it comes to his potential and his current ability, that is completely determined by our scout here, and he could be right, he could be wrong. Chances are with Turan, he looks very promising, but he might not get to the level that Creaney is suggesting here. But let's check out our other scout. Here you go, this one is Stephen Gormal, and God knows why the club is employing this guy, because he has got a 7 for judging player potential, and he was on the report for Barbosa. Now, for me, that would make me doubt even more the potential that he's suggesting our player has. Now, there's a good chance that Barbosa and Turan here will both be excellent players, but it could be their potential or ability is being exaggerated a little bit here in the coach report, or might be completely misleading. So do bear that in mind. If you feel like you're going to sign one of these, let's say you decide on Turan, get another scout's opinion. Put your best scout on him if you know you're going to sign him. You should always know who your best scout is. That way, once you've got a player you want to sign, let him have the final say. The guy with, say, 19 judging player ability, 19 judging potential. And now that you've decided on the player for your team, you've found who will be the perfect player for your side, you've considered other factors that we haven't spoke about here. For example, the obvious one of, do you need that kind of player for your team? Do you have the money for him? Like I mentioned earlier, if you're after a ball-playing defender and one of them isn't and one of them is, that's going to sway your opinion a lot. But once you've done your due diligence and you want to sign a player, you've got a second scout's opinion, I'm quickly going to show you a few tips you can do to start to lower the asking price a little bit, or at least try to when signing him. Now, I know already, because I've tried to sign Turan, he's not going to want to sign for us because he's 17 and he can't really join until he's 18 or something silly like that. So we're not going to focus on him. We're going to imagine that we pick Barbosa. To be honest with you, I ruled Barbosa out once I saw he was a 5'11" centre back, if I'm being perfectly honest. But yes, if we take into account everything else, let's say we were going to get him. If you wanted to pay a lower fee, the first thing that you can do, obviously negotiate through here. Once you've done that, go ahead and declare interest in him as a top target. What that will do is it will start to unsettle the player. If you then make a bid and it gets rejected and it's clear he really wants to join the club, you might see that he puts in a transfer request. You might see that he causes an uproar and it forces his team to sell him. Either way, always a good idea when you know who you're going for to declare him as a target. You'll also get a rough idea of how much they want to join the club. Another thing you could do to upset a player at his club and make him want to leave, other than just declaring your interest, is you can assign a scout to him who can watch him every game, and he'll start to see that the scout's going to see him and feel like he wants to join your club more. The same way, if you declare interest in this guy as a top target, let's say that we do as top target, there you go. You can go to any of your club leaders. Let's take someone like Oscar Pereira here, who's been a great player for us. I can go to discuss, click promote club to top target via press, ask him to do it. Sometimes they won't, sometimes they will. If they do it for you, you'll see that that usually has an effect on the player that you're trying to sign and makes them more willing to join your club. But if you want to go even further than that, let's go back to that player we were just looking at, and I'll show you what you can do. This is a feature that most people don't know about, nor I'm not sure it has a real effect. If you want to scout someone hands-on and you want to try and upset the apple cart a little bit more, you can actually go and watch this guy play a game, even if you've got nothing to do with his match. You can do this by going to the team that he plays for, so in this case, Vitória de Guimarães here. You go to their schedule. Let's say this game against Nacional that they've got coming up. You can hover over the no action section, either click scout match, or you can attend the match yourself, and when that game comes around, you'll be able to go visit. In this case, as you can see, I've got a match on this day, so I can't go watch, but maybe on the next one, have I got a match there? Could we go watch that? We can go and attend that match if we want to. When you get to the 5th of August, you'll go into that match and you can watch it and keep an eye on your player as much as you like, or you can leave the match halfway through if you've seen enough. But just to let you know, that's the way that you can go check a player out, and there'll also be a media article usually if you've got him as a top target for your club. Let's say it was Gareth Bale, you might see a media article that said, Gareth Bale really excited that Jakes came to watch him at a game, or something like that, desperate for a move, and it can start to pique that player's interest in a transfer, maybe cause a transfer request to be handed in and lower his value. So just a few tips there to get the price down. But really today we were looking at how to compare players, what to look for when making a sign-in. But if you have found this video useful, please do go ahead and smash that like button for us. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.